I wish this trial had been videotaped, and I wish a tape of this trial could be played in every university and that everybody in this country could watch it, because we have been programmed to believe that victims will act a certain way. And if there's anything this case proved, beyond your guilt, beyond reasonable doubt.
A Denver judge on October 25th sentenced former Dr. Stephen Matthews to 158 years behind bars for intoxicating 10 women he met on dating apps, and then essay 8 of them. The sentence, which equates to life behind bars, was met with applause from Matthews' victims and their families. Many of the women said after Matthews intoxicated them during dates between 2019 and 2023, he then tried to gaslight them, trying to convince them that whatever happened was their fault, suggesting they drank too much or couldn't hold their liquor. Before pronouncing the sentence, the judge heard victim impact statements from 21 people: victims, their family members, and supporters.
We'll be fighting the memories, the nightmares, the guilt, and the shame for the rest of our lives.
Headaches, anxiety, panic attacks, PTSD, sleeplessness, vomiting, depression, and overwhelming fear.
Stephen Matthews took away what normal looks like for me.
I don't know if I can honestly say I'm a survivor from the defendant, as I'm barely surviving.
We'll be fighting the memories, the nightmares, the guilt, and the shame for the rest of our lives.
You tore her life apart. You've taken away her trust, her happiness, and the ability to enjoy life in an open and carefree way.
While I still lay in his bed recovering from whatever he gave me and from what he had done to me, he was already actively searching for his next victim.
Victims recounted the long-term impacts of this heinous act. Many said Matthews has no remorse and has not taken accountability for anything he had done and had zero regard for the women he impacted. Judge tells victims, "You were believed." Prosecutor Victoria Kelly said in court that she is certain there are dozens or more victims. In his closing comments, Judge Eric Johnson addressed the victims in court directly.
Well, there's a whole lot to unpack. It's late. I won't do a lot, except just to begin with, contrary to other assertions, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. The evidence of guilt is patently overwhelming. And in here today, there is a room full of pain. And this is pain that you have caused your victims. So much suffering, none of it deserved. I also acknowledge in this room full of pain, your family, and that you have caused them to suffer. Your family had to hear the anger and the pain that you caused victims directed at them. Your family just wanted to be proud of you and to love you, and they will still love you. To mom, stepfather, father, I get it. As a parent, they're always going to love you. But the shame you have brought on them will be a heavy burden that they will bear the rest of their lives. I'm sure they raise you better. Mr. Steinke, I do thank you for your grace and your sensitivity that you exhibited in your statement. Mrs. Matthews, the Mr. instead of doctor is not a slight or an insult. It's a practice I have. Everybody who comes in front of me, unless they're a doctor on the witness stand, is Mr. or Miss. I've had judges and juries that I refer to as Mr. and Miss instead of Your Honor, and doctors who are on the jury that I refer to as Mr. and Miss. That's not an insult. Mr. Matthews, you have diminished this world. You have dimmed many of its lights. You've hurt our society, and it's a darker place because of you. You brought disgrace upon yourself. You brought disgrace upon that name that was given to you, that was pure and clean the day your parents gave it to you. You've even managed to ruin dating applications. I mean, what should have been technology with a really fun upside, the opportunity to meet people you couldn't otherwise meet, you know, maybe fall in love, maybe have a family. Now it's just something else for young girls and young women to fear as another danger zone. I see my understanding is that some of my jurors are listening. I want to thank you again for the service in this case. They sacrificed 1 month of their life to do their duty to our system under our Constitution. Their sacrifice cannot be appreciated enough. You listened to the evidence. You held the prosecution to their burden of proof. You did your duty, and I thank you. You know, Mr. Cohen, in your closing argument, you know, you again mentioned that these women went to his apartment and they drank. Good Lord, I wish this trial had been videotaped, and I wish a tape of this trial could be played in every university and that everybody in this country could watch it, because we have been programmed to believe that victims will act a certain way. And if there's anything this case proved, beyond your guilt, beyond reasonable doubt, was that how we think victims are going to react is 100% wrong. How we think they should act is completely misguided. And if anybody thinks they know how they are going to react until they are faced with the pressure and in that situation, you have no idea. You're completely wrong. Very briefly, you know, to the victims, I started my career out in Jefferson County, and this was not my case, but I was in the office when Detective Stacy Galbraith of the Golden Police Department and Detective Edna Hendershot of the Westminster Police Department believed a victim. And I was in the courtroom when the judge sentenced Mark O'Leary. And it's now a Netflix series called Unbelievable. And now I find myself having presided over this trial. I'll add Detective Jennifer Lott and Detective Andrew Como to names I will remember. And look, you were heard. You were believed. The verdict says that. And the Venn diagram between not proven and innocent is not a circle. As I sit up here in this robe, I am not Eric Johnson. I represent the law. I represent the rule of law. I represent society. And it does fall to me to hand out punishment, and a punishment that's commensurate with the social contract breaches you have so egregiously done. I will sentence. I cannot heal. Many of you are here for closure. I hate to disappoint you, but I will not be able to provide you closure. Closure will come from within. It will come from you. It will come from your family. The best thing you can do is live well, be happy, and I wish you peace. As a preliminary issue, I know I heard from some victims of non-charged testimony. I appreciate the statements, but under our law, I cannot consider uncharged the statements, so I'm not. As I said, I will issue a sentencing order. I calculate the maximum, as I have indicated, if the sex assaults do merge into one as to each victim. The second degree does not. The maximum is 158 years. You will have to register as a I will not waive any fines or costs. You can pay those. I will declare you indigent. You may proceed in form of paupers, and I will appoint the Office of the Public Defender to represent you in your appeal. pursuant to 18.3.414.5. The evidence is that you are over 18 years of age. You have been convicted of a statutorily listed crime. The victims to you were strangers. In today's day and age, we live in a world of social media where the word friend is bastardized. The fact that you had chatted with somebody over a week or a month does not suddenly mean they're not a stranger to you. People v. Hunter, 307 P. 3rd, 1083. The victim there had dinner with the perpetrator and was still deemed a stranger. These women were strangers to you. Or at the very least, you promoted the relationship primarily for the purpose of sex. And finally, given the totality of the evidence in this case, I find it not difficult at all to believe that you would subsequently commit one or more offense if you were released. So you are there was a lot of talk by Mr. Cohen about proportionality. And I acknowledge that when we start talking about some of these numbers, it does start to sound silly. But then we put that into perspective. The reality is we don't have truth in sentencing, and he's probably looking at doing 35% of his time. So that's some other way to look at that and put things into perspective. When considering multiple consecutive sentencings, the case law is very clear. Wells Yates v. People, Lucero v. People, the attorneys are familiar with these cases. The courts should consider each individual sentence, not the aggregate sentence. So it's easy to get lost in the weeds of 200, 100. But when we look at one woman, 12 years is an infinitely reasonable sentence. On the count 26, the third-degree assault charge, I am going to sentence you to 2 years in the county jail. Pursuant to 18.1.35011C, I do determine after consideration of all the relevant facts and circumstances that a concurrent sentence is not warranted, and I order that the misdemeanor sentence be served prior to the sentence to be served in DOC and prior to the time that you are transported to the Department of Corrections to serve all of your other state correctional facility sentences. After that, on counts 13 and 14, I'm going to sentence you in each of those to 6 years in the Department of Corrections. Those are consecutive to each other and consecutive to the third-degree assault. There are 3 years of period of parole as to those. On counts 4, 8, 12, 18, 22, 30, 34, and 38. These are the second-degree assault charges. I'll sentence you to 6 years on each count, consecutive to each other and consecutive to all other sentences. There are a 3-year period of parole as to those counts. On counts 1, 5, 9, 15, 19, 27, 31, and 35. These are the 12 years on each charge. It would be improper. It would depreciate what you have done, the heinousness of your crimes, if you did not serve a sentence for each victim individually. So that is 12 years times 8. Each of these are to be consecutive to each other, consecutive to the second-degree assaults, consecutive to the third-degree assault, for a total of 96 years, and that is those are the indeterminate sentences. The total number of years are 158 years in prison. This matter is concluded. You're remanded.